Hello everyone, this is the first video on object-oriented programming using Python. In this video we learn about why we need to program using OOP and what are the basic building blocks of OOP. So let's start. OOP is just another way of writing programs, or you can say it's a way of giving structure to your program. And the reason there are several reasons to do that, such as reusability, better organization, and easier to maintain the code. We'll see how these three uses uh, are beneficial for programmers in the upcoming videos. So let's start. We'll first understand the meaning of class and the meaning of instantiation. So the best way to understand this is to take the real life example. Suppose we have a class of history. So what this means is there's a history class, and again in that history class we'll have a number of students. So suppose there is student 1 who belongs to history class. So when we write class history, we are defining the class history, and when we write student 1 is equal to history, in this way we are defining student 1 as an instance of history. What this means is that student 1 is an instance of history class. That means there are some properties of history class, and since student 1 belongs to that history class, that properties will be shared by that student. Let's see what does that mean. So if we print this, we see that there is a particular location in memory which is occupied by this student 1. So if we compare it to the real world, we have a history class and we know that student 1 belongs to that history class. So it just means that student 1 occupies a position in that history class. That means that place is kind of booked by that student. And again, as I told you, that student 1 is an instance of history class, so some properties will be shared. But since each student will be unique, there will be some unique properties for that student which will not be shared by that class. So that means a certain student will have a certain name. So let's assign first name to that student, Rohit. Again, that student will have a last name. Well, let's assign it Nike. So these properties which are unique to that instance are called as attributes. So student 1 has an attribute first name as Rohit, last name as Nayak. These properties are not shared, are not even though student 1 is an instance of history class, these are unique to that student. So let's see. So if I ask what is the student name, student 1 name, we see that it's Rohit, and if we ask the last name, it's Nayak. So again, there can be multiple students for a particular class, so we can have another student, and let's give that name so we have another student from that same class history whose first name is Radhika and whose last name is Patil, and we can access those names using in this way. As you can see that I had to do the same thing twice and there was a lot of repetition of code. What I can do to eliminate this is that I can define an init method. Okay, so what this method does is that whenever, okay, let me just first finish the code. Okay, so what this init method does is whenever you create an instance of a particular class, this method will be the first method which will automatically run whenever you run this block. So suppose I have defined a class in this way, and I have defined the init method, and now if I want to create an instance of that history class, so student 1 belongs to that history class, so now I have to define Rohit and the last name Nayak right now. and I don't have to do this step, do this extra step of giving it a first name and last name separately, because it will automatically assign these names as soon as I create this instance. Student 2 history, and suppose Mohit and Shetty. So okay, we have two students from the same class, which is nothing but two instances from the same class history. And if I want to find out student 2's last name, it's as simple as that. So what we have done is, if we compare it to the real world example, it's very easy to understand. There is a class history, and whenever I am assigning a place in that class to a particular student, I want its name, first name and last name, and as soon as I have these two, I am giving it a position in my class, which is the same thing which what's happening here. We have a class history. As soon as I create an instance of this class, I need two things for that. I need the first name and last name. So this is called as, so these things are called as attributes. And one thing to notice here is that this self, so you writing self is a convention. So if whenever you are talking about self, you are talking about the instance. So in this case, student 1 is the self. In this case, student 2 is the self. So suppose if I want email address for the student, so what I can do is, I can define a method email address using self. So what is a method? A method is nothing but a function defined inside a class. So as you can say, return okay. As you can see, if I have defined a function inside a class, so now it's called as a method, and what this method does is, it will give me an email address for that particular student. So again, if I run this, and again I have defined the student two instances, student 1 and student 2, and now if I want email address of student 2, okay, I have to run it like this. I have to put parenthesis at the end. So you can see that I have got the email address of the student 2. Okay, notice one thing here. If I don't write self here, and if I just run it like that, what does it say? That the function or the method takes 0 arguments, but 1 was given. But here we see that I'm not writing anything. So what's happening here is, whenever you define a method for a class, and whenever you call that method in this way, student dot email address, and I told you that student takes the place of self. So since I am not defining anything here, and but I am calling the method in this way, student 2 is automatically passed as an argument here. If I want to bypass this thing, if I want to avoid this error, another way to call this method is using the class. So this method is defined inside the class, so we can always call it using this in this way, history dot email address. But now, since this is a function and it's not taking anything, I have to put in an argument, which is student 2. Let's see if this works. No, because here I am not defining anything. So I have to first define it here this way, and now I'll get mohit.shetty@gmail.com. So what this does is, it will go into history, it will call this function, and in this function the argument is self. So I told you what this self refers to is the instance name. So in this video we understood about class. What is a class? Class is this general history which we defined here, and What is a method? Method is a function defined inside the class, and we have learned how to call that function using class as well as using the instances. So student1 dot email address, student2 dot email address. So in this video we have discussed classes, instances and attributes and methods. What is a class? This is a class history which we defined it. Instances are the particular so student 1 is an instance of history class, student 2 is an instance of history class. Attributes are the properties unique to that instance. So student 1 has the attributes first name, last name. Student 2 has the attribute first name, last name. We understood what is the meaning of init. Init is a function which is automatically which runs automatically as soon as we create the instance. And a method is the function defined inside the class, which can be called either using class name or it can be called using the instance. Thank you.